Monday, June 3. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. The body of Edward Agha, Jamaica's 5th Prime Minister, arrived on the island Sunday evening. The body, which arrived aboard a Caribbean Airlines flight, touched down at the Norman Manley International Airport in Kingston at approximately 6:07 p.m. yesterday, where it was received by his family members and government officials. The former Prime Minister died at a hospital in the United States on his birthday, May 28, after a battle with cancer. The former Member of Parliament for Kingston Western is to be accorded a state funeral. Members of the Senate on Friday observed a minute of silence for the late former Prime Minister Edward Agha. Senate President Thomas Tavares Finson informed that a joint meeting of the Houses of Parliament will be held in tribute to Mr. Agha.
I am informed that a joint meeting of the House and Senate will be held in tribute for Mr. Agha. In due course, we will be notified of those arrangements, and we would demur to that sitting with respect to the substantive tributes which inevitably members of the Senate may wish to place on record in relation to Mr. Agha.
Acting Leader of Government Business, Senator Cavan Gale, hailed Mr. Agha as one of the builders of modern-day Jamaica.
A man who has done a great deal for this country. A man who has committed his life in serving this nation, and we would consider him to be one of the builders of modern-day Jamaica. And so we are deeply saddened by his passing, and we must commend him for the tremendous work that he has done for this nation. There are communities that would be in mourning now, his own West Kingston constituency that he developed. The musical fraternity to which he played a tremendous role, the parliament, and also in the latter part of his life, he made tremendous contribution to the Football Federation.
For her part, Leader of Opposition Business, Donna Scott Mutley, said Mr. Agha is part of the political, social, and economic fabric of the country.
Mr. Agha is part of the political, social, and economic fabric, which is Jamaica. He is woven into the history, and he is the last serving member of the committee that determined and charted the course of Jamaica's independence to be alive. Well, now we have lost him. Mr. President, it is appropriate that this Senate acknowledges him in spite of the fact that we are going to be having a joint sitting, because as has been said, he was appointed to the then Legislative Council, which is now the Senate, in 1959. Although he was not born here in Jamaica, there is no one that can challenge the fact that you could not have found somebody more Jamaican. He impacted our music and impacted our culture. And history will show that he was into institution building.
Mr. Agha was one of the founding fathers who framed the Jamaican Constitution in 1961. He initiated a rewrite of the human rights section of the Constitution to provide for a charter of fundamental rights and freedoms, and created the Office of the Public Defender. The former Prime Minister was also a member of the first Parliament of independent Jamaica. The government is seeking to promote programs aimed at reducing Jamaica's importation of organic agricultural produce. Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries, J.C. Hutchinson, made the announcement while addressing farmers at the 2019 staging of the Rural Agriculture Development Authority's St. Bess AgriFest, held at the Santa Cruz Community Center in St. Elizabeth on Friday. Hutchinson indicated that programs to encourage increased cultivation of Irish potatoes and onions have already been embarked on. He said castor beans and bamboo, for which there are emerging markets, are also being added to the list. The Education Ministry and Nestle Jamaica Limited signed a memorandum of understanding for the extension of the company's health and wellness program in schools at the Gregory Park School in St. Catherine last week. Speaking at the signing ceremony, Minister of State in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Alando Terrelong, is calling on parents to ensure that their children eat healthy foods. Terrelong pointed out that there are certain foods that must be avoided at all cost because they are, quote, killing our children slowly, end quote. The justice system is now equipped with an interactive online platform that gives judges immediate access to basic human rights law. According to United Nations Senior Human Rights Advisor George Abulzalf, it combines international, regional, and national law, and it's accessible online, which is a good opportunity for it to be transmitted to other countries across the region. He says it is the first of its kind anywhere in the world. He described the online platform as, quote, marking a milestone in the development of professional training capacity in the administration of justice, end quote. Noting that the United Nations started supporting the dissemination of international human rights law in 2015 with a training seminar for parish court judges. Chief Justice Brian Sykes said the platform, which was launched in April, will help to bring the nation's courts up to speed with current views on human rights law. The online training platform offers modular training with an emphasis on international human rights of persons deprived of liberty, rights to a fair trial, and international human rights law. The Jamaican Urban Transit Company, JUTC, says its probe into recent fires involving its buses revealed that there are efforts to undermine the operations of the state-run entity. In a news release Friday, JUTC Managing Director Paul Abrams said that there was substandard workmanship which caused 2 of the 3 fires. Mr. Abrams said the probe discovered serious breaches which could cause spontaneous combustion when the buses were being operated. Among the breaches outlined by the JUTC is the fuel line being too close beside a turbo and a rag used to tie the hydraulic line, among other displaced connections in the engine. The JUTC said its fire prevention team, which was recently formed, will be reporting weekly on faults discovered with the buses and corrective measures it has implemented. The JUTC said a fire prevention checklist has also been developed and staff given refresher fire prevention training. This is in addition to the regular maintenance program. A lack of understanding about hearing loss combined with a lack of support can lead to talented individuals missing out on life-changing opportunities. The Jamaica Association for the Deaf has for the last 80 years sought to provide support and provide educational opportunities to the deaf community. Now the team is working with the USAID to advance their services. Here is more in this report. The vision of the Jamaica Association for the Deaf, JAD, is to have a fully empowered deaf community, and the team understands that education is the main avenue to achieve it. Executive Director Kimberly Sherlock Marriott Blake says the JAD provides preschool to post-secondary support.
We offer social support services to the deaf community and their families, and that includes families engagement, parenting support, guidance and assessment, helping with that transition from school to work and any other civic engagement. And of course, we have our business enterprises that helps to provide not only employment for the deaf through our fine hand bindery that does books and memorabilia, but also by providing services to the wider population.
Jamaica's deaf population is currently estimated at 54,000. The JAD Hearing Services conducts hearing screenings and diagnostic assessments. However, communication between the deaf and the hearing continues to be an issue. This is now a major focus for the JAD and a 3-year partnership with the USAID. Mrs. Sherlock Marriott Blake explains that the Literacy Enhancement for the Deaf project seeks to improve the literacy outcomes for those who are deaf and hard of hearing.
Education as a whole has been given quite a bit of attention. We've appreciated the value of instilling the right support, putting in place the right structures and services and policies, and this project is aimed at doing just that, putting in place the support services for our students to engage, the resources for our students to be able to learn from, the needs and meeting the needs of those parents who may have no clue what to do with their child who is deaf, and of course supporting the teachers to ensure that what they impart to our students is top-notch at an international standard and at a standard that is befitting of children who are the future of our nation.
One major concern is the lack of a standardized sign language, which affects the academic performance of deaf students.
Sign language is like many other languages, like English, for example, has variations of English depending on the English-speaking country you go to. Similar structures are in place for sign language. So even across the Caribbean, there is Jamaican Sign Language, Trinidadian Sign Language, Bajan Sign Language, and what we're trying to do is to ensure that Jamaican Sign Language is standardized. Just as our Creole differs slightly by parish, there are persons who use Jamaican Sign Language who use slightly different words. It differs by age, or young people who are very much braffing and turnt and all these things, those have signs. And older persons who would not have exposure or interest in those things wouldn't have a sign for that. So what we're standardizing is the Jamaican Sign Language across the system. In the same way that we have a standard or a level of standard English that's used across the education system, it's standardizing that sign language because children coming from different areas with different levels of exposure would use slightly different signs, slightly different ways of expressing themselves. But standardizing that helps to ensure that even outside of the classroom, when we go and say we are preparing interpreters, when we say we're preparing our teachers, we're preparing our healthcare workers and different agencies, the same sign language that a deaf person comes in and uses is the same sign language that someone would have been taught.
Deaf people are very visual, so if you're going to applaud, this is how you do it.
How far along are you? What have you done so far?
Oh man, it has been an interesting journey. Interesting because we step into every project knowing that you don't know everything, but appreciating that there is so much to learn that will modify and grow the project. So far, we are more than halfway through. We're almost coming to the end of our project. Our project is set to end in April 2020. We've been looking at extensions to ensure that we get the full academic year, which would end in June. And so it's not just the 80 students who we've been able to give psychological assessments to, not just the 75% of teachers who we've been able to engage with JSL Level 3 and 45% of our teachers who have moved up 2 levels in sign language. It's not just I think it's just about over 100 parents who've been engaged and exposed to sign language so they can better engage with their kids. It's about the fact that when you look at those kids' faces now, they're able to say, yep, I'm fully understanding what my teacher is saying. I'm able to engage in different ways. So far, I would say that we are surpassing our targets in different ways.
In our next newscast, we'll focus on the challenges being faced by the deaf and hard of hearing and how you and the government can help. In regional news, General Secretary in the Dominica Public Service Union, Thomas Letang, has instructed public officers to embark on a go-slow to force the Roosevelt Skerrit-led administration to meet and negotiate new salaries. He said the government has yet to respond to its 10% salary proposal, and he views this as a form of disrespect.
We are giving the government of Dominica up to June 11 2 meet our demands, to call us.
In the meantime, Deputy Prime Minister Reginald Austray is accusing the union head of harboring political ambitions by calling the strike action. Speaking on a local radio, Mr. Austray urged public sector workers to ignore the calling.
They cannot do it, as I've said before, based on the performance of this government. They cannot do it based on the good things that the government is doing for this country, but they're trying to see if they can muster public support to cause mayhem, to cause violence, to cause disruption, and to cause problems within the country. And people must see Mr. Letter for what he is, not in the interest of public officers, not in the interest of the development of the country, but in his own personal, petty, political interest.
The High Court in Antigua and Barbuda began hearing submissions last Thursday after telecommunication companies Digicel and Flow recently sued the government to avoid sharing the digital spectrum with the Antigua Public Utilities Authority. Information Minister Melford Nicholas said he thinks the matter would be resolved in the interest of all parties.
It is a matter that I think will be resolved in the interest of all parties. And I believe that inviting the courts to have a look at the whole process may well bring some clarity and some finality to the whole process. There is going to be a limited amount of information that I could further provide you, only to indicate that there is going to be that preliminary hearing in the courts today. The government's interest will be represented by Senior Counsel Anthony Astafan and two other members from the Legal Department, Mrs. Carla Brooks-Harris and Ms. Alicia Asker. In the absence of the Attorney General, I will make the appearance on behalf of the government.
Nicholas says the refusal of the companies to share the spectrum has forced the government's hand in ensuring that the APUA gets an equitable distribution.
The APUA has made it a point of concern that over a period of time, that their interests have not been best served because they do not have an equitable share of the spectrum. The Cabinet has deliberated upon this matter over a considerable period of time, and I think it has got to the point where the rubber has hit the road, so to speak. I think the Cabinet made a determination and did authorize me to put certain measures in place, whereupon those measures were met with some responses from the operators.
Guyana's President David Granger says his administration is on a mission to eradicate homelessness before demitting office. Newsroom Guyana's BB Katoon tells us how the government plans to do this.
President David Granger on Friday outlined that his administration is working to build strong communities during its time in office. During his first visit to Prospect and Perseverance housing schemes on the east bank of Demerara, the head of state said through the Ministry of Communities, he is trying to abolish destitution before he leaves office.
I would like to leave office, because I ain't left it for just now. I would like to leave office where there's not a single homeless Guyanese. Every Guyanese would have a roof over his or her head.
The coalition government is in its fourth year in office. Guyanese are expected to go to the polls within the next year, where it will be determined if the coalition continue its rule for another 5 years. The president said the building of homes will also generate jobs. He urged newly appointed Minister with responsibility for housing, Annette Ferguson, and officials of the Central Housing and Planning Authority to ensure that residents have access to water, electricity, and other amenities.
In sports, we're on the track. IAAF World Under-20 double sprint champion Brianna Williams added the junior 100 meters national junior record to her list of accolades on Saturday after she ran 11.10 seconds to win the event at a meet held in Jacksonville, Florida. Williams, who has held the 200 meters record at 22.50 seconds since last July when she won the double in Finland, got off to her usual bullet start and was well ahead of the field midway the race, winning by a massive margin over training partner Khalifa St. Fortin of Trinidad and Tobago. The time is the joint 15th best of all times by a female junior sprinter and beats her previous personal best of 11.13 seconds. also set in Jacksonville in March 2018. And over now to cricket, where the West Indies had a positive start to their World Cup campaign last Friday with a 7-wicket trouncing of the Pakistan team. Playing at Trent Bridge, the Windies reduced Pakistan to 105 all out inside 22 overs and then went on to sweep the match with 13 overs to spare. Here are the highlights.
That's why they put the square leg back for Fakir Zaman, but it doesn't matter. Inga goes up, one down. Got him. He is sharper than you think, Andre Russell.
Whoa, look at that ball. Has he done it again? He has.
It's edged, it's flown. Well, the catches in this World Cup to start things off have been brilliant. The Shad have catched it as well. What's it come off?
The clear spike when the ball is next to the glove. You need to reverse your decision. You're on screen now. Make the single.
Goes short. It's in the air. Chris Gale moves like a cat around the slips. Pitches it up. It's been short all day. And finally, the full-length delivery.
Should be another one. Sheldon Cottrell will take this comfortably. Catch it, another short one does the business. It's short, short and shorter. That's a good strike. Very good strike from Wahab. That's gone a long way. Wahab Riaz strikes a mean ball. That is the end of that.
On the other hand, would be quite happy. Just take Pakistan on. That's gone. Will do the distance. Smacked it. Absolutely nailed it this time. That's gone in the air and 6 again. Hafiz, can he get there? Can he catch this? It's taken.
Heaving and power batting from Chris Gale, who's dominated proceedings. He's gone to 50.
Top edge with a fielder underneath.
Got a wicket, he has. He deserves it. He's got a third. And that's a good thump down the ground. What about that?
That will be the end of the game. A resounding blow by a hugely talented Nicholas Pooran.
The West Indies will next face Australia on Tuesday. And that's the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. Pleasant viewing.